There was a small country in the middle of Europe called Austria. It is not big like France or Germany. It has no sea, no big oil fields, and no huge tech companies. But today, Austria is one of the richest countries in the world. Its people live very well, with high salaries, nice cities, and strong banks. How did this happen? Austria did not get rich by luck. It used smart plans, good location, and quiet work over many years. This is the story of how Austria secretly built its wealth. A long time ago, Austria was part of a big empire called the Austro-Hungarian Empire. It was powerful, with kings and big armies. But after World War I in 1918, the empire broke apart. Austria became a small country. Everything was hard. People had no money. Prices went up very fast. This is called hyperinflation. The economy was in big trouble. Then came World War II. Austria was occupied by other countries after the war ended in 1945. Life was difficult again. Buildings were destroyed. Factories did not work. People were poor. But Austria made a smart choice. In 1955, it became neutral. This means it did not join any big military groups during the Cold War. It did not take sides between the West, like the USA, and the East, like the Soviet Union. Neutrality helped Austria stay safe and trusted by everyone. Because of this neutrality, Austria was in a perfect spot on the map. It sits right between Western Europe and Eastern Europe. Vienna, the capital, became a meeting place for business people from both sides. They could talk and trade without fear. After the war, Austria got help from the Marshall Plan. This was money from the United States to rebuild Europe. Austria used this money well. It rebuilt factories, roads, and power plants. The economy started to grow fast. In the 1950s and 1960s, people called it the Austrian economic miracle. Growth was strong, sometimes 5% or more each year. New industries appeared. Tourism began to grow because of the beautiful Alps. Ski resorts and mountain villages welcomed visitors from Germany, Italy, and beyond. Austria also had good rules at home. Workers and companies worked together in something called social partnership. This meant fewer strikes and more peace. Unions, employers, and the government sat down regularly to agree on wages, working hours, and social benefits. This system created stability. People felt secure. They saved money and spent wisely. The government was careful with money. It did not spend too much. This built trust inside the country and with foreign investors. But the real secret started later. In 1989 and 1991, big changes happened. The Berlin Wall fell. The Soviet Union ended. Eastern European countries like Hungary, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, and the Baltic states became free. Their economies were weak. Banks there were old and broken. People needed money to start businesses. Currencies were not stable. Many factories were outdated. Unemployment was high. Many big Western countries were careful. They waited to see if these new democracies would last. Big banks from Germany, France, and the UK moved slowly. But Austria did not wait. Austrian banks saw a chance. They knew the languages. German is close to many Slavic languages in the region, and historical ties remained strong. They understood the culture because of history. The old empire connected them for centuries. Geography was close, easy to travel by car or train. Vienna is only a few hours from Budapest, Bratislava, or Prague. Big Austrian banks like Erste Group and Raiffeisen Bank International moved in fast. They bought local banks or opened new ones. They gave loans to people and companies in these countries. They helped build new homes, shops, and factories. They trained local staff and brought modern banking practices. By the 2000s, Austrian banks controlled a big part of banking in Central and Eastern Europe. In some countries, they had 20 to 30% of the market or more. Erste Group became one of the top banks in places like Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Romania. Raiffeisen was strong in many others, including Serbia, Albania, and Bosnia. This expansion was not just about profit. It created deep ties. Austrian companies followed the banks, construction firms, energy companies, retailers. They invested in the region too. This was a big bet. Austrian banks sent billions of euros east. They earned good interest from loans. When those countries grew fast after joining the EU in 2004 and 2007, Austrian banks made a lot of money. Profits came back to Austria. This helped Austria get richer quietly. The money strengthened Vienna as a financial center. New offices opened. Jobs grew in banking, law, and consulting. But big risks came too. In 2008, a huge global financial crisis started. It began in the USA with bad home loans. Banks around the world had problems. Money stopped flowing. Stock markets fell hard. Austria was in danger. Its banks had given so many loans in Eastern Europe. If those countries could not pay back, Austrian banks would lose a lot. Some people thought Austria's whole economy could collapse. Newspapers wrote scary headlines. Ratings agencies lowered Austria's credit score. The crisis hit hard. Eastern European economies slowed. Loans went bad. Currencies like the Hungarian forint and Romanian leu fell sharply. Austrian banks needed help. The Austrian government acted quickly. It gave money to support the banks. There were bailouts and guarantees. The EU and other countries helped too. There was something called the Vienna Initiative. Banks from Western Europe, led by Austrian ones, promised not to pull money out of Eastern Europe suddenly. This stopped a bigger disaster. It was called Vienna because the talks happened there. Austria did not run away. It worked with the EU to make things stable. Banks built stronger capital, extra money to cover losses. Vienna became a place where leaders talked and fixed problems. The strategy worked. By 2010 to 2012, most loans were performing again. Eastern Europe recovered faster than many expected. The big bet worked. Austria did not lose. It won in the long run. The crisis even made Austrian banks stronger. They learned to manage risks better. They kept their positions in the East while some foreign banks left. This puts it near the top in Europe, often higher than many bigger countries. Even after some tough years, Austria's people enjoy one of the best living standards. Vienna is one of the best cities to live in the world, clean, safe, with good parks and culture. It ranks number 1 or 2 every year in global livability surveys. Austrian banks still manage billions in Central and Eastern Europe. They act like a bridge. Money from the rich West flows east through Austrian banks. Growth from the East flows back to Austria. At the end of 2024, Austrian subsidiary banks in the CE region had a balance sheet total of about 299 billion euros. Austrian banks hold 20 to 30% of banking business in many CE/C markets. This brings steady profits, especially as the region shows solid earnings even when Western Europe slows. Banks like Erste and Raiffeisen continue to lead, with strong positions in countries like Czechia, Slovakia, Romania, and others. Erste Group has been recognized as the best private bank in CE for many years in a row. In 2024 and into 2025, returns on equity in CE/C banking markets averaged 15 to 20%, much higher than in the euro area at around 10%. In recent times, Austria faced challenges. The economy had a long period of weakness after 2 years of recession. Growth was very low or slightly negative in parts of 2025. Some forecasts showed around 0.3% to 0.5% for the year, with actual figures settling around 0.5% for 2025 as a whole according to institutes like WIFO and IHS. High energy prices after the Ukraine war, weak demand from Germany, Austria's biggest trade partner, and global issues hurt manufacturing and investment. Inflation rose to around 3.5% in 2025 due to energy costs and other pressures, but it started falling sharply by early 2026. In January 2026, inflation dropped to about 2%, a big relief after staying higher for months, with full-year averages expected around 1.9 to 2.5% for 2026. The labor market stayed resilient but faced pressure. Unemployment rose to around 7.4 to 7.5% in 2025 and early 2026, with registered rates climbing to 8.8% in January 2026. Seasonal and methodological factors play a role, while harmonized EU figures are lower around 5.5 to 5.6%. It is expected to ease gradually as recovery builds, possibly falling towards 7.0 to 7.3% or lower in harmonized terms over the coming years. The banking sector remained strong. Banks had high capital levels, often above 17 to 18% in key measures, and made good profits. They lent carefully, focusing on homes while business loans grew slowly. Regulators added safety rules for risks like real estate to keep things stable. Stress tests showed the sector could handle tough shocks, with solid buffers. Austrian banks benefit from higher returns in CE compared to Western Europe. Now in February 2026, things are starting to look better. Inflation is falling fast, thanks to lower energy effects, the end of some temporary measures like electricity price breaks, and easing pressures from food and services. Interest rates are coming down, helping households and businesses borrow more affordably. Forecasts from places like the European Commission, WIFO, IHS, and OMB show growth picking up to about 0.9% to 1.2% in 2026 across many sources, with some seeing just over 1% or slightly higher. WIFO at 1.2%, IHS at 1 to 1.2%, and further improvement in 2027 around 1.1 to 1.5%. Unemployment may fall steadily. The government works on reducing the budget deficit, which stayed high around 4 to 4.4% in tough years, but plans include cuts and better revenue to meet EU rules, with projections for around 4.1% in 2026 and lower later. Debt is around 80 to 83% of GDP, but managed carefully. Austria has other strengths too. Strong factories that make high-quality things, like machines and cars. Beautiful mountains and cities bring many tourists. It is part of the EU, so trade is easy. The government keeps debt under control and spends carefully, even in tough times. Unlike London or New York, Austria does not shout about its money. There are no big flashy stock markets or crazy risks. It builds wealth slowly and safely. Even now in early 2026, as the world deals with trade tensions, energy shifts, and slow growth in places like Germany, Austria keeps its quiet strength. The recovery is gradual but building. Signs show modest rebound in confidence, better exports ahead, and stable banking support for growth at home and in the region. The end of high inflation pressures and lower borrowing costs are helping households spend more and businesses invest again. Austrian banks' strong CE exposure continues to provide advantages, with positive momentum in residential lending and no major rise in non-performing loans in commercial real estate compared to Western Europe. Austria's story is one of patience and smart choices. It turned weakness into strength many times, after empire collapse, after wars, after crises. Neutrality gave it safety. Location gave it opportunity. Careful banking gave it profits. Good social rules gave it peace at home. People in Austria value quality life over show. They have excellent healthcare, education, and nature. Vienna's coffee houses, music, and history add to daily joy. Tourism brings visitors from everywhere, adding to the economy without big noise. In good years, millions come for skiing, hiking, classical concerts, and Christmas markets. Manufacturing stays strong with companies making precise tools, car parts, and machines sold worldwide. This sector helps keep jobs steady even when service is slow. Many firms are family-owned and focus on long-term quality rather than fast growth. As Europe faces changes, more energy needs, trade rules, and tech shifts, Austria's bridge role may grow. Its banks know the East well. Its people are skilled and reliable. The country invests in green energy, digital banking, and education to stay ready for the future. What can we learn from Austria's story? First, location matters a lot. Being in the middle of Europe is like having a treasure spot. Austria used its geography to connect people and money. Second, trust and stability bring money. Neutrality and careful rules made people feel safe to put money in Austria. Third, long plans win over quick wins. Austria waited and invested when others were scared. It took risks but managed them well. Now the world has new problems: high debt, energy troubles, wars, and changing trade. Many look for safe places. Small, stable countries like Austria may do well again. Quiet bridges for money could be more important than loud empires. Austria shows that you do not need to be big or noisy to be rich. You need smart positioning, patience, and good choices. From a broken empire to a quiet financial fortress, Austria built its fortune in silence. The question is, who is positioning quietly today for the next big change?